One of my favorite activities to do regarding autism is I love research. I've been writing research papers for like 15 years now, and have written a whole bunch of papers. But because of my writing all these papers, it's also helped me have a real big affinity to looking at research papers also. And I'm on a number of different listservs that bring articles to me. So whatever your interest is, you should find groups or listservs, etc., that will literally send you articles that might be of interest to you. So this article came out last week, which I thought was really fascinating. And it says, functional connectivity in the social perception pathway at birth is linked to attention to faces at 4 months. Now, what does that mean? What that means is babies are born wired to look at faces. That's what that means. It means babies are born wired automatically to look at faces. Because if you read this article, it's talking about 4 months, but it actually talks about even after several weeks. Babies look at you, and that's the whole bonding oxytocin kind of thing you've heard about before, where babies will look at the mom and look at the dad and look at caregivers and look at well-meaning people, and they will bond with that person, right, through their eyes. So why is that important when it comes down to autism? Because even though this study does not particularly go into great detail about this, in kiddos on the spectrum, this is not happening. In kiddos who are on the, now, there are multiple kinds of autism. Let's be clear with this. There are some kiddos with autism who are later on diagnosed with autism who will essentially, they start out already having some limited eye contact, and they later on develop more and more of these social, behavioral kind of issues that you see related to autism. And then eventually at 2 or 3 years old, they're diagnosed with autism. That's the most common version of autism. But then there's also regressive autism. Regressive autism is a child who starts neurotypically or relatively neurotypically, and then because of some event or events, they go backwards. Whether that's a reaction to some sort of medication or vaccination, or whether that is because of trauma, whether that's because of some sort of significant issue within the family, etc. Something goes wrong, an illness, something goes wrong, and they regress. So for instance, we had a kiddo come in last week whose a child was 2 years old, growing typically, showed me videos of the child talking and walking, and then all of a sudden they got really, really sick, and then done. Stopped talking, having trouble walking, right? Completely regressed. That's called regressive autism, right? So the most common way is you pretty much go right into it, but then you have this thing where the child is neurotypically developing, and then they unfortunately drop down. And then there's something called syndromic autism. Syndromic autism. These are children who have autism, but it's because of something else going on. So, for instance, they have cerebral palsy or some sort of brain injury at birth, and that has created some issues with a lot of other pieces within their brain, and they have autism as sort of a secondary diagnosis, right? Or some kids with Down syndrome. Some of them are extremely bright, but some kids have some significant issues, and some of them are labeled also as having autism, although it's sort of like the secondary, to something. Or some kids will have, I will take care of a lot of kids with genetic issues. They call them duplication syndromes, like which is similar to the trisomy that you'll see, trisomy 21 you'll see with Down syndrome, but there's trisomy 15, and trisomy 13, and trisomy 20. So these trisomies will also potentially create a syndromic issue where these kids will have autistic-like features, but they really won't be, on the spectrum, but they will have autistic-like features. And then there's deletion syndromes. deletion syndromes is instead of having a full gene, like the 2 genes, you have like 1.5 of the gene, and so, or 1 1/3, or you're missing pieces. And those deletion syndromes can also cause syndromic autism. So it's not, so that once again, autism isn't their primary diagnosis. They have deletion 13, but because of that, they have these autistic-like tendencies, right? So understanding that those essentially, that's the 3 essential kinds of autism. There's many other pieces, but that's the 3 essential kinds. So a kid who is at 2 or 3 or 4 months old, you can look at a child and already see that this child is developing in one way or potentially going in another way. And the cool thing is that by adjusting these kids, I have seen so many kids who have come in who have been like kids who aren't smiling, who aren't social, etc. at 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 months. And after getting them adjusted and doing functional neurological exercises with them, I've watched them change. I've watched them change, and the parents have watched them change. And the parents will tell me, like one particular kiddo, for instance, and I don't think I told you this, I was talking to ICP about this last weekend, but we had a kiddo who came in a bunch of years ago. I think it was like 8 years ago, one of my favorite little kiddos. I just saw him last Wednesday. And when I first saw him, he was 8 months old and not rolling and not crawling. Is that normal? To be 8 months old and not rolling and not crawling? No. So, but here's the interesting thing. At 8 months old, he weighed 25 pounds. He was a big kid, right? He was a big kid. Now, both mom and dad were much taller, larger framed people, right? So, what do you think the healthcare providers said about this kiddo and why he was not rolling and crawling? Yeah, he's too fat. He's fat. That's why he's doing it. And first off, this kid was not fat in any way. I mean, he had lovely chubby legs and stuff, but he wasn't fat, you know. He was the normal size for a kid, for his body shape. It wasn't like an unusual big belly. It was just typical large frame kiddo. But if you see the father is 6'5" and the mom is 6'1", you'd expect this kid to be a big size kid, right? So to say he's fat is ridiculous. Anyway, so the mom says, is that why he's not rolling? Because my other 2 kiddos, or 3 kiddos, I can't remember, yeah, she had 3 kiddos. My other 3 kiddos, they all rolled and crawled normal time, and he's not doing any of that. So is that normal? I said, no, that is not normal. He should be. And she said, but they're saying it's because he's fat. I'm like, no, it's not because he's fat. Why is he not rolling and crawling? It's because, as Dr. Little will call it, he's disconnected. There's a disconnection somewhere. Every kid is supposed to, I don't care what weight you are, what happens with your body and your brain, is your brain says, I weigh 25 pounds, I'll just have to use 25 pounds to do this, instead of 10 pounds or 15 pounds, whatever it is. It just says, I'll use what I got. But then, at the end of the exam, after we did the exam, we found out he was having all these issues. We'll talk about stuff as we go on. At the end of the exam, the mom says, I got to ask you one more thing. She said, he doesn't smile much. He doesn't look at my eyes much. Is that of concern? I said, yes, that's significantly concerning. And it kind of goes hand in hand. Because what we find is that a lot of children, not all, but a lot of children who later on will have some sort of neurodevelopmental problem will have motor issues early on. Lo and behold, 1 month's time the kid's rolling, 2 months time the kid's crawling, 3 months time the kid is walking, and now, I just saw him the other day, he's like the most social kid I know. This kid is a very different child, and the mom knows it, and the mom has been bringing him now for 7+ years because she knows the benefit of what it could have been versus what it is. Right? So when you think about this article here, this social perception pathway is critical in understanding that when a child at a young age is not trying to be social, something is up. Something is going on. Now, we would never say, that child might have autism, right? That's not our place to say something like that. What we say, though, is your child is supposed to be doing certain things at certain times, and if they're not doing those certain things at certain times, there's something disconnected. There's something that isn't right. The brain and the body are not working the way they're supposed to. What's chiropractic's job? To make the brain and body work the way as good as it can. As good as it can. Within its own limitations, right? Every kid's got limits. I have a bunch of children with cerebral palsy. There's certain limitations within cerebral palsy that aren't changing, right? But we can make that child be the best they can be. Because the modern medical community think best is average. I think best is best. Top. Right? They say, well, there's this range of children between here and here, right? Well, I don't want my kid to be here in the lower end of the average. I want them to be the upper end of the average. You know, I was just talking to someone else, and they said, yeah, you know, my wife, she teaches you guys human development, right? And talking about developmental milestones, a lot of kids, chiro kids, like chiropractic family, you know, the second, third generation kiddos, a lot of those kiddos, they are quicker in their milestones because their nerve systems are free and clear. A lot of the babies that we see are quicker in their milestones, even if they're not a chiro kiddo in terms of their parents, but if their mom and was pregnant, getting adjusted her whole pregnancy, and she has the healthiest possible birth, and then we're adjusting them ever since. These kids are unbelievable. Because we not perfect always, you know, there's always things, but we see amazing changes, right? Because if you take care of the brain and nerve system, then the body takes care of things better, which makes sense, right? So that's why I think I'll tell you, it is super important. If this is like if pediatrics is your thing, I don't care whether it's autism, whatever it happens to be, ADHD, learning disorders, whatever it happens to be. Take extra classes like you are right now, but take the other ones that you can too outside of the university setting. You know, whether it's ICPA or other clubs or other organizations, take as much pediatrics as you can. Number one. Number two, read articles all the time. Get on listservs, get on your favorite journals, and have them send you articles so that you are constantly on top of things, constantly learning all the latest, greatest kind of stuff. And number three is make sure that you're always honing your skills. Because the way that you become like the pediatric chiropractor in your community that people go to is not because you have letters after your name, and not because you're 60 some odd years old and have a lot of experience. It's because what are you thinking about? I spend so much time thinking about pediatrics and kids and autism, so this is what I happen to bring into my practice, right? So we have this constant stream every single week of several new children on the spectrum and all these other kids with developmental issues every single week, because my focus is there. So that what you think about comes about. So you create the practice that you want. So my suggestion to you is to start preparing the fertile ground of your brain with what you want. Don't waste your time on crappy social media that teaches you who's doing what to whom and what negative blah, blah, blah thing is happening here, there, and everywhere, and what some person happens to be eating or what their cute little puppy is doing. Who cares? Stop living vicariously through all these other people and spend your time putting stuff in your brain so that when you get out and you start your practice, whether you're an associate or you're buying a practice or you're getting someone who's retiring or you're starting your own practice, that you build the exact practice that you want. Because you've created this fertile ground, you created this vacuum. This is what I was telling the Wisconsin people this weekend. You create this vacuum, right? And the universe always wants to fill a vacuum. So when you create a vacuum and you say, this is what I'm looking for, and you show the universe by your studies and your reading and you're going to seminars and you're going to clubs and all that kind of stuff, and you show the universe, this is what I want, then that is what you manifest. And I can only tell you that because I came from nothing. I slept on a pull-out couch in an apartment building in the 70s and 80s in Limbrook, New York. So I got nothing handed to me on a silver platter. People are like, oh, you're so lucky. I am not lucky. I worked my tail off to get here. But you can do that too. You don't have, it's not, you don't have to be handed something. Some of you guys are very fortunate. God bless you, those who are handed something. But I wasn't that fortunate. So I had to change my brain into thinking like, who am I to take care of all these kids? To, who am I not to? Who else is gonna? That's my thought now. Who else is gonna take care of these kids on the spectrum? It's my job. My job is to take care of these kids, right? But the way it become my job is because I studied it, right? And if this is what you want, if you want to take care of the now 1 in 31 children out there who have autism and be able to do it with authority, then this is my suggestion to you.